Hello and namaste. It's June 1st and this is a weekly astrological forecast. The focus of this week's report is going to be on the Mercury Retrograde that officially begins on the 7th of June. That's this Saturday, but it's going to be taking us through the entire month of June. So this is a Mercury themed report. We're going to be talking about Gemini. We're going to be talking about what this retrograde is about, what's going on, and preparing us for the time ahead, okay? So what's been going on this last week is we had this new moon in Gemini, and that new moon was square to Neptune. Very interesting, setting the tone, setting the theme for the month ahead, this Gemini Mercury oriented time. And being square to Neptune, I saw that this new moon is sort of like the Seven of Cups in the tarot, which is probably the weirdest looking card in the traditional tarot. It's this guy looking over these clouds and he has all these choices and he's just like, what am I going to choose? That thing that looks like a thimble, that thing that looks like a blanket that I don't recognize, and it's a weird looking card. But what it's about is there's this sort of mysterious fogginess, is like everything sort of slows down and we have this sort of mystical in-between time, and now we have choices, we have options. And this week the astrology is fairly tame. There's less tension on us, it's more relaxed. And so whereas a lot of people would say, oh great, a perfect time to relax, open a cold one, just chill. I like to remind everybody, and we talked about this last week too a little bit, when that tension is on us, when we're feeling that challenge and that tension, that is the times of the greatest potential, because that is when we are developing strength, we are doing our work, we are moving through our stuff. But us being human beings on spiritual missions, being here, and we all are on spiritual missions, it's like we're in constant dual battle with like the ulterior forces, out there, these things that try to suppress our own spirituality, the government, the culture, everything is really stacked against you in this particular time when you start to wake up. But anyways, it's like when there's this resistance, we're pushing, and we're met with challenge, and then we push forward, and then there's less resistance. So really this time of there being a little less resistance and there being, more ability to slow down and to breathe, it's not just a time to sit and relax, and it's certainly, as we talked about last week, not a time to just go back into old patterns and forget about everything. It's actually time to push forward when there's no resistance. You can think of it like the Romans and, the Vikings with their shields, and they're pushing, and then they push forward, okay? So when there's no resistance, that's when we're advancing. Okay, so it's not a time to be losing perspective, is what I'm saying. It is a great time to enjoy. I mean, the moon's going to be in Leo the next 3 days. Yep, moves into Leo tonight, will be in Leo through Wednesday, then she'll move into Virgo. But what we're saying is, we can use this to our advantage, really. We can really use this time to our advantage. And I'm going to be talking about really using this Mercury retrograde to our advantage, because I always have to talk about Mercury retrograde like a broken record, explaining the depth of Mercury, because it's the understanding that throughout time our understanding of ourselves is always changing, right? And astrology, which represents these different parts of what it means to be a human being, Mercury is the mind, our understanding and our priority in these different parts of ourselves changes, as we evolve and we shift around. So our understanding of our mind in perspective with the rest of ourselves, and where we use it, how it's being implemented, is different at all different times, okay? So what everybody says is Mercury retrograde is about technological malfunction, communication breakdowns, etc., etc. And the reason why that happens is because when a planet moves retrograde, that is when they go into the underworld. They get deeper, they get closer to spirit, they have unlimited depth, right? They fall into this black hole that is the truth of what that planet is. It's not just superficial, it's not just mundane, okay? So where have we put Mercury in today's day and age? In technology, in computers, in Facebook, in the internet, in cell phones. Okay, so what happens when Mercury wants to get deeper, when Mercury wants to broaden our understanding of Mercury, of our mind, of our intellect, what it means to have this dualistic nature is technological breakdowns, because Mercury does not just want to be contained to Facebook and the computer and all of these things. Yes, Mercury wants to broaden our understanding. He's saying, yes, you don't just have to communicate through the little electric signals in your computer chips, in your computer. We can get so much beyond that. It can get deeper. It can get more intimate. It can get more into what spiritual understanding of Mercury is. And we'll talk a little bit about that because Mercury, you know, being a Gemini myself, I like to be defensive of all these things, but you know, it gets really deep. Mercury is very profound. Mercury is Krishna and Balaram and the Buddha. These are all Mercury incarnations. So these, you know, Mercury is a lot deeper than just technology and, you know, intellect and, you know, zeros and ones and those kind of things. He wants to expand. He wants to get deeper, okay? So this Gemini month that we're in, beginning with the new moon in Gemini, square Neptune, that was like the Seven of Cups. It begins with mystery. It begins with choices. It begins with dreams. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Right? And Mars is picking up speed. Right? The last 3 months, March, April, May, was tough with our wills. We were seeing in ourselves what our own energy vampire-like habits are, what our own energy vampire-like relationships are, and we've had to do some serious digging and adjustments in order to make energy flow again so we don't get stuck. And that's what that Mars retrograde was about. That Mars getting deeper, that Mars going into the underworld was seeing the depth of our energy, of our willpower. Wanted to get deeper, wanted to get stronger, you know? These self-realized beings in India, these saints and people, you know, they're not even claiming to be incarnations of God, but they have so much energy because they are aligned with the deep spiritual understanding. You know, all energy originates in the spiritual world. So when we tap into the spiritual world, that is how we get energy. And you know, these beings, some of them will sleep for 1 hour a day and then wake up and then start writing their books, their sacred books, you know, and then go to sleep and sleep for 1 hour and then they'll wake up without an alarm clock. That's what our potential is. That's how much unlimited energy we can tap into ourselves. And we've been learning that through this Mars retrograde. But now that Mars is speeding up, Mercury is slowing down. Okay? And what's going on here? Well, we also have the asteroid Ceres turning direct today. Ceres is stationary, about to move forward. Ceres is the mother asteroid. All of the asteroids represent this very feminine nature that is starting to come back to us. This month is going to have a lot to do with this feminine nature. We're going to talk more about the full moon in Sagittarius next week, but June 13th we have a full moon in Sagittarius. You can really consider now, you know, the new moon period, this moon building up to the full moon, June 13th, the energy will pick up. Alright, so we have to start preparing for this. Understand what's going on. What is going on? Tension between the masculine and feminine. Who wants to step forward? Who wants to take the lead? Who wants to get in charge is the feminine. Each of us wants our own feminine to start moving forward because of the years of suppression that we have been in. Okay, and Ceres remembers all the years of suppression. It's very, very interesting when you start studying human history and then put that in terms of how we have suppressed our own consciousness, what parts of ourselves we have demonized throughout time, and there's this story, there's this dance that's being told through ourselves, through the parts of ourselves. So the feminine has been suppressed for a long time, and we all know this. But during the age of Pisces, it was very interesting. It was being suppressed by this Piscean nature, which is almost contradictory, but it was like the church took over the entire world. It really did. It took over the whole world. It, you know, eradicated everything but itself. And then it prejudiced everything, especially the feminine, you know, the earthy, the paganism that connected to plants and animals and those kind of things. Mother Nature got trampled upon in the name of blind faith, in the name of simply accept Jesus Christ, in the name of you must accept me as your priest and I'm the only way you're going to heaven. And then femininity got suppressed by the intellect that replaced the church, or is replacing the church. You know, it's just like, and scientists are saying, oh, that the church is so stupid. Here, just worship the mind, just worship scientific data, and like, all you have to do is do experiments on lab rats and blah, blah, blah. And the feminine is still being suppressed. So the intellect is also suppressing the feminine. And Ceres remembers, the mother knows how long it's been suppressed and how it's been suppressed by all these different parts, okay? So this Mercury retrograde is beginning in Cancer. And Mercury is making a trine to the north node of the moon at the beginning, at both points of being stationary pretty much in this retrograde. So he begins, this retrograde in Cancer is going to move back into Gemini and then move forward, and you know, it's not till July 1st that he turns direct again. So this retrograde is lasting the whole month of June. We're going deep. We're looking at ourselves, and what we're looking at is we are reanalyzing, we're remembering, we're piecing together, we're getting a deeper mental understanding of the changes that have been made over the last 3 months. There have been some serious changes internally, externally. Friend groups have changed, our roles have changed, our jobs have changed during that Mars retrograde. It was this whole year of 2014 is the year of the wooden horse. It is a time of new beginnings, of making these very important and serious changes. And we were talking about that way back in January, but then that really kicked off in April is when these big changes happened, right? And we are still adjusting. We're going to be adjusting. We're always adjusting. But now Mercury retrograde is going back, and it's like, oh, we're remembering the past. We're remembering our childhood. We're remembering how it was before all the changes. We could be counting our losses. We could be, seeing some of the emotional depth, but then bringing it up to our consciousness. Going down. Oh, what are these changes? Who is close to me? Who isn't close to me anymore? What has happened? Where is my family? Where was my family? What does it really mean to me? And we're bringing it up to our consciousness. This is what a Mercury retrograde means. Going down, bringing it up, bringing this stuff up to our intellect. It's really not a mundane and superficial and my car is going to not start type of thing, unless you refuse to see the depth that is there. The way to prevent those challenges is to get into what Mercury is asking us. Mercury wants us to get a better understanding of him. That's what this Gemini time is. And Mercury is the mind. And Mercury is very tricky. Like I said, Mercury is Krishna Balaram, very, very tricky personality. And Krishna is more than this. Krishna is everything. Krishna is love, the incarnation of love. But Buddha was specifically, a Mercury-like incarnation. He is an incarnation of God appearing in his own trickiness, right? What is he doing? Is he saying, I am God, and you don't have to worship God. I am religion, and you don't have to practice religion. I am scripture, and you don't have to read scripture. It's very, very tricky. And Buddha is very, very wonderful. Buddhism is very, very wonderful. But without a doubt, he sort of embodies this sort of, Mercurian, trickiness, this dualistic nature that you think one thing and then something else turns out. Buddhism loves these paradoxes, these mental games. In Zen Buddhism, they have these koans. How many hands does it take to clap? All right, so it's like things like this. And we are getting into our own Mercury nature during this Mercury retrograde, so we're seeing the depth of our own trickiness, how our mind could have deceived us into things. And the truth is that we're all very delusional. We all have these fantasies, and everybody does. Just look at the scientists. They're freaking delusional. They think that they know everything because they have these controlled experiments with lab rats and stuff, and look where science is leading us. Monsanto, the pharmaceutical industry, fluoride in the water, GMOs fix everything. If it's done in a lab, that means it's perfect, and humanity is going because we're forgetting the feminine side of things. So the intellect is saying, you are leaving out some of the stuff that I want to process, that I want to be a part of. I don't want to be disconnected from the feminine nature. The mind doesn't want to be this enemy that we turned it into. And, even the New Age movement and some of these, impersonal practices, they'll say, oh yes, the mind is a problem. You must end your mind. The mind is all illusion. And again, that is missing the depth of Mercury. If you say everything is illusion, oh, everything is just an illusion, well then you better comprehend how deep and profound this illusion is, man, because this is not just some, oh, I'm just gonna not think anymore and then, be enlightened. No. So there's this story, there's this depth that's calling us into it. And it has to do with remembering the feminine. And come the full moon in Sagittarius, we will be experiencing more tension. So this is our time to push forward and dream and meditate. And that's another thing. With this time to push forward, you don't want to push forward too much. This time, this Mercury retrograde, we still have to be slowed down. We still have to consider everything. That's the Seven of Cups again. This guy is sitting there and he's looking at all these choices. And he's saying, oh, well, is that, how am I going to piece that and that together? Or maybe I don't want so much of that, So we're doing that. We're reanalyzing and all of these things. But the other thing is we don't just want to pick something, oh, that one's pretty, go for it, you know? We don't just want to bolt in one direction while there's no resistance, because then, well, we're going to meet this full moon in Sagittarius with some pretty, you know, heavy, you know, challenge. Because this full moon in Sagittarius is going to be about, again, confronting the feminine versus the masculine. This feminine wants liberation. She wants to get free of all these stupid masculine, being condemned by the intellect, being condemned by government. We're all being restricted. We're all being limited by these very, you know, mundane, oh, well, this is good, that's bad. Oh, you smoked pot, 7 years in jail in this state, but it's 10 years in that state, and it's 0 in that state. You know, it doesn't make any sense. But the reason why none of this intellectual stuff makes any sense is because it's been disconnected from the feelings, from compassion, from love, from nurturing motherly energy. We need our mind to be communicating with our hearts. Yes, there are brain cells in our heart. They are connected, but we have lost this connection because we've gotten too far into the mundane side of Mercury. Just technology, just experiments, just what you can measure on a ruler, just what you can count, just what you can put into ones and zeros. Mercury is more than that. Our brain, our mind is more than that. It wants to get into its depth. It wants to go down into the heart, remembering our story, our past, our own feminine story. Each of us, our own unique individual story reflects the story of the whole. So each of us has suffered the limitations of the feminine being trampled upon, being suppressed, being pooped on. We all have our own story that reflects that nature. And now this feminine nature wants to remember what has happened. She wants to count her losses. She wants to know, well, that's really sad that that person left me. That breaks my heart. And it causes me to want to justify myself. It causes me to want to move in this direction. It wants me to make sure that I won't make the same mistakes again. So we do need to make sure that we aren't going back into old patterns. And we definitely need to make sure that we are, you know, listening. Is this coming just from our previous conditioning of the mind? Well, I was taught in school that this is an A+ and this is a B. That is superficial, mundane Mercury. That has no comprehension of real human nature, of what it means to be a family member with other beings on this planet. You know, our measuring of success, which we have been taught and conditioned to believe is our only way to measure ourselves in this world. You know, we hang out with our family members and then we talk about our careers. You understand how messed up that is? We hang around and we talk about our grades and our paychecks and what we've done, and then we pat each other on the back and say, good job, you've accomplished a lot. You haven't loved anybody, you haven't cared for a single person, but I'm really glad that, you know, you got that job. That means that you can sit in front of the desk for another 10 years and, you know, get a good paycheck, because it means a lot, because we put you through college. You know, it's this bullshit that goes back generation and generation and generation, and you know, our work goes back generation and generation and generation. So this stuff goes very deep. So let's grab onto Mercury as he goes back into Gemini. He's going to go back into his natal home. And the other thing is, this is a subtle Mercury retrograde. He's not making any harsh, tense aspects with any other planets. You know, we can let this go, like, drift past us if we want. We could remain in the Seven of Cups and just be in the clouds and be just like, all these choices, all these choices. Life is so wonderful and mysterious. I don't know what I'm ever going to do. I guess I'll just prance around. We do have to do work. We do have to continue to preserve our energy. We learned from the Mars retrograde how to be strong, how to, you know, make an impact, how to carve out the new way, and we do have to continue to carve out the new way. You know, again, like last week I said, if we just push our energy back through our bodies, it's going to go through the old, you know, ravines that we've already carved out. So we have to carve out these new ways. That means doing a little bit of work. We're doing emotional digging with this Mercury retrograde. We're going back into the past. We're remembering our childhood. We're getting into our hearts, we're getting into our compassion, we're getting into our nurturing feminine aspect, and then we are bringing it up to our minds. Now, how can I use the computer, how can I use the technology and align it and change it and mutate it to be more compassionate, to be more aligned with real human nature? You know, all these things need to change. Facebook needs to change. YouTube needs to change. They have made these things very limiting, very restricting to keep our minds in this very stupid, mundane, animalistic state. And it desires to expand. It desires to get into what it means to be a human being. So remember the Buddha, remember Krishna, remember that the trickiness of life is in service to love, and then we can appreciate the ups and the downs and see that it is all there as joking, loving remembrance of who we are, what our real position here is, which is always some form of loving service to one another and to God. I'm wishing you the very best in this very mystical, tricky month of June, and I'll be talking to you soon. Namaste.